The owlbear, a monster that's been around since time before record, the iconic beast that epitomizes the terrifying amalgamations that roam the realms. You know how they look, you know how they sound, but how do they taste? Owlbear is an interesting meat, because just as the creature is an amalgamation of two contradictory animals, its flavor is just as much of an enigma. Overall, it has most of the characteristics of bear meat, being rather intense in flavor and very gamey. However, the color is much more similar to the dark meat on a turkey. It's still pink in complexion, but nowhere near the deep maroons of bear meat. But the inherent taste of owlbear meat is a small part of its overall flavor profile. The biggest factor in flavor is actually the monster's diet. This can be said of most beasts, of course, but most beasts are much more picky eaters. Owlbears are omnivores and will eat anything they can get their claws on. This ranges from delicate greens and berries to small game, fish, or anything that dares oppose it, whether wolf or man. And sometimes oppose it means being in the same square mile as it. So what an owlbear really tastes like is its last meal. Due to the volatility of the taste of the meat, depending on its last meal, it can be more useful to categorize owlbear by the season. Springtime owlbears will wake up from their hibernation and consume young, tender greens and berries. This leaves their meat rather tender and mild, but with a nice sweetness to the end of it. In my opinion, this is the proper time for hunting owlbear, as this is exactly how we want the meat. This may seem surprising at first, though. If I was to ask your average layman when the owlbear should be hunted, the obvious answer might be in the fall, right before hibernation, when it's all nice and fat, and after they finish gorging themselves. But there are some issues with that plan. The first is that most owlbears will bulk up on anything and everything that they can before hibernating, making their diets even more of a hodgepodge than it already is, and gods forbid that you're eating owlbear that just finished scooping up salmon by the dozen. The fishiness almost ferments in the beast's gut, and imparts a downright foul aroma and flavor to the meat, as if you're dining on some fish that was left on the beach in the sun all day. But diet isn't the only problem with fall owlbear meat. The second issue may be a bit surprising to many culinarians. The problem is, fall owlbear is really fatty. Now, to most avid eaters, that's exactly what you're looking for in a piece of meat. Fat is flavor, after all, and whether it's chicken or beef, you usually want to render that fat down to extract the most of it. However, the flavor of livestock is very tightly controlled by whatever their masters are letting them eat and graze on. If you've had game meat, you know that this isn't the case for every animal. Even for venison, a relatively tame game meat, you need to be wary about too much fat, as it can impart strong, questionable flavors to the meat. Owlbear fat is magnitudes worse, and all those difficult flavors I just discussed get amplified in fall owlbear meat because of the sheer amount of fat that they put on before hibernation. The true tragedy here is that many who hunt or consume owlbear don't realize this, and they go for the time of year when their quarry is the fattiest, instead of hunting the springtime owlbear when they're the tastiest. This has spoiled the meat for many, many individuals who try it, and I would advocate that if you are one of them, to give it another shot, assuming that it's hunted in the spring and prepared by a competent chef, of course. Now, speaking of fat, let's discuss the butchering process. Butchering owlbear is not too difficult of a task, and the sheer meatiness of the beast provides great yields, even if the person doing the butchering makes some mistakes. The primary concern is the quick removal of the fat for the aforementioned reasons. If you store the meat with the fat cap still on, it can completely ruin it. As long as the fat is removed, feel free to separate it into whatever cuts make sense for your own culinary needs. As opposed to beef, which has a multitude of different uses and many different cuts to facilitate those uses, owlbear is a bit more of a one-trick pony, so don't fuss too much about whether you're cooking with the loins or the chuck, you're going to treat it the same. That's because there is one law to the preparation of owlbear: low and slow. There are 3 reasons for this. First, it is imperative to remove whatever fat we can, so there's not much readily available fat to render down in the pan, leading to tougher meat when you cook it hot and fast. Second, Owlbears are hard-working animals with very strong muscle fibers that are built up from constant use. They're not standing around grazing in fields, they're charging at their prey day in and day out. However, this is a great bonus to the smart cook. While we don't have much surface fat to moisten the meat, this muscle will dissolve into rich gelatin when given time over low temperatures. This is how you avoid the tough as leather owlbear steak that you might consume in this tavern. Well, the tavern's run by novice cooks. And finally, owlbears eat anything and everything, so it's better to just assume they're riddled with parasites. And those parasites can get you sick unless they're cooked to proper temperatures to completely kill them. I repeat this, do not, under any circumstances, eat undercooked owlbear. You don't want to deal with the aftermath. So, then what can you do with owlbear? As long as you abide by low and slow, you can do quite a lot. The standard hunter's recipe is owlbear stew, and for good reason. Stews and braises are perfect avenues for the proper cooking of owlbear, and they allow for its distinctive, deep flavor to shine, while spicing it properly to avoid some of the more questionable extra flavors that come from its diet. Owlbear meatballs also work great if you brown them quickly on a hot pan, then place them in an oven for a few hours to cook down in a rich sauce. Smoked owlbear is another hit, using the smoke as a medium for low and slow cooking, and the smoke adds depth to the flavor of the savory meat, while also covering up any of those imperfections or the intense gaminess. Owlbear truly is a meat that shows the creativity and skill of the chef. In the wrong hands, it can be downright inedible, but with some smart thinking and gentle care, I would even call it my favorite game meat. The beast is a surprisingly versatile creature when properly processed. Wilderness survivalists, crafters, and even arcane artisans are often excited to butcher a fallen owlbear for more than just the meat. First, the owlbear hide. The thick pelt of an owlbear is highly sought after by craftsmen due to its exceptional durability after being tanned correctly. It insulates against the cold, keeps the elements off of you, and has a timeless look that immediately makes you recognizable as someone who knows your way around the outdoors. Wilderness scouts and trappers often fashion it into winter cloaks or tent canopies, and many rangers are not considered full-fledged adventurers until their mentor gives them a proper owlbear cloak. Owlbear claws. Just like the hide, owlbear claws are prized for their durability, whether for fashioning into tools or as small blades, or for adorning trophy totems. Many barbarian clans and druidic circles alike identify themselves by the claw of the owlbear, so make sure you don't attach any totems to your adventurer's pack that you aren't sure about. You might make some friends you weren't expecting, or some enemies depending on how you play your cards. Next, the eyes. Owlbear eyes are keen and adapted for twilight ambushes. The eyes of an owlbear are prized by alchemists for certain retinal pigments, which can be refined into reagents for elixirs of dark vision for those whose lineage wasn't blessed with that useful ability, such as, well, yours truly. The eyes are also used for night ink, a specialized mana-infused ink which can only be seen and read by those who have dark vision. It is commonly used as a tool among elvish espionage campaigns in human realms, and I'm sure you can come up with your own slew of uses for it. Next, owlbear bones. In the remote woodlands and frost-marked highlands, certain hunter tribes have long used owlbear bones as decorative inlays for weapon shafts, bow limbs, and ceremonial tools. When polished and set into carved wood or etched metal, the bone takes on a smooth, almost ivory-like finish with subtle flecks of violet or amber, depending on the age of the beast. These adornments were once dismissed as backcountry curiosities, but recently, pieces of owlbear inlaid craftsmanship have found their way into the stalls and salons of the capital, where aristocrats prize them as exotic status symbols. A well-finished belt buckle or dagger pommel featuring owlbear bone now fetches a high price from urban collectors who have never even seen a live owlbear. Finally, the feathers. Though owlbear is flightless, its feathers are thick, sturdy, and remarkably similar to the flight feathers of great raptors. These feathers are highly prized by fletchers and hunters for use in arrow fletching, due to their durability and natural aerodynamic shape. Unlike standard feathers, Owlbear plumes are stiffer and denser, giving arrows great stability in flight and improved resistance to wet weather. Archers across the frontier often pay a premium for properly cleaned owlbear fletchings, and elite ranger bands are known to dye them with clan markings or crest colors. Now, let's go through 2 example recipes to finish off. First, owlbear stew. This is a very common recipe that you'll find in the realms of man, next to the forest that owlbears call home. Elves also employ a similar method of preparation when culling overgrown owlbear populations, and it's also a favorite among dwarves, although this is a dish they need to go out of their way for, as their territories are not usually filled with owlbears in the first place. In this recipe, owlbear is first cubed, taking care to remove as much fat as possible, and it's lightly coated in a well-seasoned flour. It's then browned in a hot pot in butter or fat, but preferably fat from a different animal. Next, add some root vegetables to the pot and get some color on them. Deglaze the pot with a dark stout and some stock. Add a bouquet garni of sweet herbs, then bring the stew up to a boil before dropping to a simmer. Keep it cooking on low heat for 4 to 5 hours. Finally, season it to taste and enjoy with some fresh bread. This is a perfect dish for starting in the afternoon and letting it bubble away until your home smells amazing and you're ready to have supper. Next, owlbear tacos. Admittedly, I had not heard the word taco until having this dish, but the gnomes I was dining with made sure I never forgot it. This method is a hidden gem, and one that I hope pops up more in the discussion of owlbear meat moving forward. This dish is actually rather similar in preparation to owlbear stew, as you'll be braising the meat. However, the serving process highlights the meat completely differently. First, melt some butter and sear off your owlbear meat in a pot until it has browned. We want to add our seasonings now, and those consist of all manner of orcish spices from the steppes, such as cuminum, dried coriander seed, and various dried ground peppers. Then add in some onions, fresh peppers, garlic, stock, small beer, and orange juice. You want to let this simmer away for about 4 hours. Right before it's ready, make some thin gnomish corn flatbreads, made by grinding corn into cornmeal, mixing with water, and pressing incredibly thin, then laying them on a cast iron pan to cook through. When the meat is done cooking, it should be ropey, very similar to pulled pork, and it should come apart easily. Ladle the meat and the reduced cooking liquid onto the flatbreads, then topped with onions and herbs. Devour, and then thank me later. I hope you enjoyed, and more importantly, I hope you're excited about giving your players a chance to eat this beast. If you'd like to hear more about my own experiences with the owlbear, make sure to check out my most recent Tale from the Road, a recollection of my time helping a barbarian boy hunt an owlbear and cooking the result of his hard work. And if that sounds like fun for your players, I wrote a little adventure seed for you to use at your own table. This, along with my owlbear analysis, is available free on my Ko-fi page, with the links in the description. I hope you enjoy.